So did you get your bills passed, Irene?
Not yet, but I got them introduced, so that's key. It's not. I didn't think I would print out.
Huh?
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go.
So, good morning, committee and everyone, Wednesday morning, January 17th, and this is the Senate Agricultural Committee meeting. And, this morning, we're waiting for, the executive director of the cannabis, board to, arrive, and we're gonna be hearing from Brand. James Pepper is at the dentist and emergency type deal. So I don't think James is going to be with us. And then we're gonna get a later run through of H81. Also, here from Vita at 11 o'clock. So, we had a fairly busy morning. So I think we'll as well introduce ourselves, and so they were watching will know who we are.
Yep, Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District.
Irene Runner, the North, including Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County.
Rich Westman, Groveland District.
Bobby Starr from Orleans. The yesterday was, did you get to watch any of that, Irene?
I was catching up on electric fencing yesterday, I'm a little behind.
Uh,
Maybe tonight I can get to watch Elf.
Yeah. The yesterday, I thought that was pretty interesting, but it was pretty, there was a lot delivered in a short period of time, and it certainly New England feeding New England stuff. Not gonna be an easy task.
No.
But we're, the infrastructure, I think, is probably gonna be as big a job to get the quick freeze and the coolers and transportation part of the movement of all that food established. And I know in Hardwick, we have a pretty efficient operation up there where they deliver, plus they pick up from the different farms as they're going by or in that area. Then they unload and reload all at the same trip. And, we sometimes will have them in to run through their process. This is so good.
Brian helped me a little with giving the numbers. I can't find a chart in any of this stuff that shows where we are right now and the 30%. They talk about the 30% all the way, but where are we now?
I
It
thought,
was somewhere between 16 and 20.
yeah,
Did you find any charts?
No, that's what she said. I
All right, I looked all through this stuff
Yeah.
I got, and I couldn't find a chart.
Well, we didn't get the whole report, I guess.
yeah, between 16 and 30. Well, 16 and 20. We got, but there's some things that are way over,
Dairy,
like dairies
vegetables.
Yep,
way over, and some things are, vegetables is very low. And, but it sounded like, there's 3,000 acres, but millions of dollars involved in the acreage that we are using. So it sounds like, there could be a return on the work, you know.
Meat's really low too.
Yeah, and
It's too bad.
we, well, her numbers are a little old and we put millions into,
Yeah.
you know, some of the slaughter facilities and butchering, and then we had BTC, you know, they've got a program that we heard about last week that is up and I guess running.
Let's go back there too, to the lab. Senator Renner and I are in institutions too, and we talked about the Capitol bill last year where we appropriated some money for, a new, furnace, basically, right?
Mhm.
Cause they were trying to share it with the rest of the campus and it wasn't working out too well, because when it was running in the summer, people were sweltering in like the dorms, but it wasn't enough for the lab. They've lost samples because they need to autoclave some stuff and so I'd like to know, you know, how they're doing, because that's a great lab, really is.
Yeah, well, you were in on the
Yeah.
visit. Did you make it, Richard? You and Brian, they did.
Now,
Well, do you, see, the last time we went, both committees went, I thought,
That's right, yep,
and, we could,
that's just something to think.
do that again. Did your chair, have you talked to him at all about,
Russ, about going now, but I'm sure he'd be open to it.
maybe in the spring, when
Yeah.
we get our work done, or, you know, be easier to travel too. We could, arrange, for that. So, well, I don't know where's Bren coming from?
I'm not sure where the opposite, he said she's walking over right now, so it can't be far.
Maybe from Waterbury.
I think they're in the city center.
City Center?
Yeah, I think that's where
Where?
the city center, right there, at the intersection of
The one stoplight.
State Main.
I know they wanted to bring us up to speed on how everything was going and, James wanted, I think he wants to make some tweaks to some of their rules and things. So hopefully they'll come along. Is there anything, have any of you heard anything from your constituents? Or any issues that they would like to bring up before the committee or? That, is the guy that called you,
About the fencing,
yes,
yeah, it turns out that's more of a judiciary issue, I guess, that's public safety when it comes to livestock getting out. So, at this point, I think he was getting through a Cal Sag, and I said, that's a good thing, because they work on this stuff all day long, and maybe they have time to handle an issue that really isn't in their particular statute.
he was from Enosburg, I think, right? Is it Enosburg?
I couldn't tell you this town, he never really told me this town, his father was at St. Albans. He's
I know.
in Franklin County.
He's lived there for 10 or 11 years and it's a constant nightmare about the neighbor. Hell, getting over on his lawn, his, leach, septic tank, mound system,
He doesn't have a fence,
or,
the farm doesn't have a fence.
He leaves the gate open and stuff, so, you know, because he's not really
Yeah.
rigorous about
well,
patients like.
there is really no fence either. It's ridiculous. looks like it's 50 years old and the posts are broke off and some
Is this-
laying down.
Where's this? Individual or?
So, he's up in Franklin County.
But he been to the state's attorney, he's been to the sheriff, he's been to the state troopers and doesn't get any response. And I guess we're the last resort or
Well, what I heard from the attorneys that were in here the other day was that it's really a judicial issue because it's public safety and we don't do public safety in this committee. Even though you would think fencing would be, especially livestock fencing
well,
would
to
be part of
start
our.
with, it's really a town issue.
Exactly,
And every town has a fence viewer.
right.
And so of course he went there first and it seems that two of the town officials either pay him to keep some animals on that property or what, but if they're all involved and won't do anything. And
It's just a Fairfax or?
no, I thought, you know,
You could be right, yeah, I just have to wonder.
and, you know, stuff like that. It festers and festers and then something serious happens and everybody, well, I don't know why somebody didn't look into that. Well, you know, of course, my house is always built on the farm. And no problem because it was part of the field, but in the fall, after the crops are, the hay's all gone. You always kind of pasture that and I mean, it was bad and 'cause my brother would have an electric fence, but it didn't work too good because he didn't do too good putting it up. And so I used to have to.
Hey, Brent.
Hi, Brent.
Right,
Uh,
maybe right.
take care of the fencing around. They get to the lawns, keep them that because rip it up, all wicked bad. I mean, and then you
I have
chase
a
them.
slideshow queued up if you want me to run through it.
Oh, that's great.
Makes it worse because they kick their feet up and the saw and everything comes up. So then you've got a million little holes. I think it helps to run.
Yeah. Give the flower a place to go. Thank you. Well, maybe we can help him out. I don't know what we can do, but
I don't know, he was gonna pursue it through the house ag, so it's perfectly fine with them tackling it if they want. I said, let me know if they don't, help me.
So I ought to talk to Dave about that.
Well, he talks to it, but yeah. Want to double check?
Good morning, Brandon.
Good morning.
Morning.
Where's your
How
boss?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, he's in the dentist chair.
Ah,
We had a dental emergency this morning. I'm not quite sure the nature of it, but you guys get me instead,
Yeah,
so.
well,
He might be able to, who knows with him? He might
Paul.
superpower over here
Yeah.
from the desk.
Well, it's always fun to go to the dentist. So, well, anyways, glad to have you and, oh, you're our witness in James anyway, so.
No, no.
Everyone in here said that.
No,
So I'm going to just pull up the slideshow that he sent you.
Yep.
Now, I'll go through that. Do you want me to show it or do you want to? You could, why don't you show it? And then I don't have to join. Yeah, you have to.
so you're gonna just give us an overview of how things are going?
I think
what
that's-
could Go better and what's been going bad?
I think that's the plan.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this. I'll find out. Yes, I think it's mostly a market update. Yeah. Yeah, I know about this.
Yeah.
So it's a little overview and happy to talk a little bit about the bill that's in house, government operations if you'd like.
Sure.
give the committee whatever you'd like to hear. So I'll start with this, if that works.
Yeah.
So are you on for the record?
Yeah, I think we've been on, yeah.
You are, okay. So for the record, Brendan Hare, Executive Director of the Cannabis Control Board, wonderful to see you all, and here to give a market update of the cannabis industry. So, a little overview, this first slide just gives you an overview of what our, regulated community looks like today. About a year and a half into issuing licenses. So, we've got a whole bunch of numbers here, and the numbers in parentheses represent our social equity licensees. So the committee might remember that we were tasked with creating a social equity program that provided some benefits to folks who were historically disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. So we've got the number, the total number of licensees for each individual license type on the left. And then on the right, in the parentheses are the number of, as a subset of that first number, how many of those are social equity licensees?
Could you tell us a little bit about the
Types.
the tiers?
Yeah, absolutely. So total issued licenses is 560 as of the end of last week. And we've got these four tables here. On the far left is the outdoor and mixed cultivators. So you guys will probably remember that when we originally proposed our fee structure, we proposed 3 different types of cultivators. Cultivators who grow exclusively inside, controlled environment cultivation. Growers who grow entirely outside, their whole grow is done under the sun outside, or in a greenhouse, which meets certain criteria. And then a third category, which is mixed cultivation. And those are folks that grow outside during the outdoor grow season. And then they also have 1,000 square feet of indoor grow space. So that sort of helps them to carry on their business throughout the year when the outdoor grow season has ended. And I say 1,000 square feet because for all of the tiers of mixed cultivators, except for one, the allocation is 1,000 square feet. Tier 2 mixed cultivators actually have 2,000 square feet of indoor space. And that was just a little quirk of when we were setting up the structure. We had a couple of people who were advocating strongly for one tier of license that offered a bigger amount of indoor space. So, but primarily mixed growers are growing most of their crop outside and a subset of their crop inside. Much smaller amount of crop is grown inside. So the mixed tier you see there, and all, I mean, actually, if you look at all the outdoor and indoor cultivators, you'll see that tier 1 is by far our most popular license type,
That's what size?
1,000 square feet or less.
There's
It's
small.
really small.
No,
So in another grow, it probably, another state, it probably wouldn't even really register as a micro grow. These are really small operators here. And the legislature and the enabling legislation for the board really encouraged the board to prioritize people who were either growing in the illicit market originally or were just, small growers. And I think that these numbers really reflect our success in that mandate, is transitioning a large subset of the illicit market into the regulated space and prioritizing the small growers over other folks. Given those numbers, of how many of the tier we have.
I guess the results are that the plan is working well then toward promoting small growers.
I think that these numbers reflect that plan is working well. And part of what I'm going to talk about today is because the plan is working so well. I do think we have at this point, a year and a half in, a better sense of what our regulated community needs. And I would say, given the large majority of really small operators that are making up this industry, I would say that the board is really providing quite a bit of technical support and handholding to these businesses. These are largely folks that are not, I would say, generally not very well capitalized, not very well resourced. They are not, for the most part, accustomed to being regulated by government regulator. They need some support in sort of every aspect of their business. I'll leave that there for now and I'll keep going through the slideshow. We can get there. We can get there. Oops, so. You can see those numbers of the mixed tier and the outdoor tier. Those folks are, the bulk of our cultivation licenses are growing either outside or in this mixed use cultivation. We have a smaller subset of indoor growers. Which also, I think reflects the legislative mandate that we develop a really sustainable cannabis industry. As you guys are well aware, the controlled environment agriculture is really energy intensive, so I think the fact that the bulk of our cultivation licensees are growing either outside and inside reflects that things are going well in that regard too.
And how big are their tier two, indoor growers?
That's 2,500 square feet is a tier 2 indoor. And just a reminder for the outdoor grows, the statute does allow for either, when I said earlier that 1,000 square feet was the cap on cultivation, that is generally true, but for outdoor, we translated that to a plant count. So folks could, when they're growing outside, since when you're growing outside, your plants could get much larger than when you're growing inside. You could also choose to grow by plant count, and that plant count is 125 plants for 1,000 square feet. So for our outdoor growers, they're either choosing that 1,000 square feet to grow within, or they're choosing the 125 plant count to grow within. So, just a little nuance there that I think reflects, the board's desire to really encourage people to grow outside. Or at least not encourage people to go into the indoor market. So total cultivation licenses are 399 as of last week. So the bulk of our licensees are cultivation licensees, which I think makes sense. The third box there is manufacturing. So those are businesses that are creating cannabis products. They're creating edibles and tinctures and a whole topicals, a whole number of things. The tiers there reflect there's some difference between the 3 tiers, and that difference is primarily turns on the methodology that the business is using for doing their extraction, for doing their product manufacturing. So tiers 1 and 2 are primarily doing sort of mechanical extractions. They are able to use ethanol and other sort of simple extraction tools. Tier 3 are folks that are using things like CO2 extraction, anything that might implicate fire safety, any of the sort of more advanced extraction methods. Those folks have to get a tier 3 license. And there's different rules that apply for the tier 3 manufacturers. So you can see the bulk of our manufacturers are in tier 2. And essentially the only difference between tier 1 and tier 2 is that tier 1 was has a revenue cap on it. So you can only earn, if you're a tier 1 licensee, you're capped out at $50,000 of revenue a year. And the board created that tier as a way of creating a really low barrier to entry, low cost license type for people who wanted to do like in-home side businesses as cannabis manufacturer. So that's the only difference between those two. So you can see the majority of folks are choosing tier 2. So total of 75 manufacturing licenses. And then on the far right, we've got the other license types, which includes our retail shops. As you can see, we've got 73 currently open retail establishments in the state.
Now, are some of those 73 any of the producers?
So some producers also have a retail license type. The committee will remember the way that the legislature created the system is that you're only allowed one of each license type. But there's no prohibition on vertically integrating yourself. So you can, one business can get a retail license and a manufacturing license and a cultivation license if they choose.
And do the 73 retailers, they have to use the Vermont cannabis?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, how do you measure whether that's accurate? How do you keep track of retailer not going elsewhere purchasing?
Yes.
Is there a way?
So we have a few tools to help ensure that everything that is being sold in Vermont is also being grown in Vermont. One of them is that the legislature gave us a good team of, field agents who make up our compliance team, who are out in the field, who are doing inspections, who are taking samples, who are running things through our testing labs. So currently we have 6 field agents who are out in the field doing this work. Another one of the tools that we use is that we have, the legislature mandated that we create an inventory tracking system that tracks all of the cannabis that's grown and sold here from seed to sale. So the board is, with the support of ADS, developing an inventory tracking system. It's actually primarily complete. We're sort of finishing up that process. But our rules require that every player in the cannabis market has to enter their inventory into our inventory tracking system every 2 weeks. Or every
2 weeks.
Yeah, you have to interact with the system every 2 weeks or every time that a transfer is made. So, all of our cultivators, you've got to go in there every 2 weeks, even if there's no change in your grow cycle, you've got to just enter that. If you ever make a transaction, you ever sell some cannabis to a wholesaler, push cannabis to a manufacturer, you got to enter that. So all of the transfer manifests, all of those transactions are entered into the inventory tracking system. So we have a couple different methods of ensuring that what is sold here is also grown and manufactured here.
Irene?
Mr. Chair, I got some feedback on the tracking system, which, you mentioned an in-house tracking system. This person's dealing with something called Salesforce.
Yeah,
Which is
that's a,
notoriously not your cannabis industry, nor is it user friendly. So we speak to,
absolutely. So our licensing portal, the sort of IT system that we built to accept applications for a cannabis establishment license, we worked with ADS to build that. It is on a Salesforce platform. That is sort of the state software platform that ADS encourages the agencies to use. So we did do our build in Salesforce. You might remember that when we were originally created, were given 4 staff originally. So we knew when we were building the application portal, we had about 3 months to do it. And we knew we would need a lot of support from ADS. So rather than try and find a different platform, we did go with ADS's recommendation and use the state platform for our software for our licensing portal. Knowing that we would need a lot of ADS support to get it built in 3 months. Because we went with the Salesforce platform, all of our other sort of IT projects that are feeding into it are also through the Salesforce platform to achieve efficiencies, not only in our staff work, but also in our licensing costs. You know, we have to pay licensing costs for the software, also our ongoing operation maintenance. We're trying to consolidate everything to this one Salesforce platform, as opposed to creating multiple different software platforms for multiple different IT tools that we're using. So inventory tracking is one, product registration is another. We will be going into another phase of development for our compliance tracking software that's also going to be built with Salesforce. So we understand, we use it every day, so we understand that it's not, a lot of people don't think it's an ideal platform for interacting with, especially if you're not used to interacting with the software tool. And this is one of the areas where I would note that we are really doing a lot of supporting, like sort of one-on-one support of our licensees. So our field staff, like I mentioned earlier, are going out to folks, when they do their site visit, they will sit down at the computer with the licensee and help them log into the system, help walk them through the system to show them how to use it. They are sort of constantly on the phone with them, over text, there's in communication with their licensees in every way possible. Our licensing team is doing the same. Our whole staff, I would say, is really focused on the fact that we are there to support our regulated community in whatever way we can. So this is one of the ways that we're doing this. But the complaint has legitimacy to it, certainly.
The retailers, all over the state, or are they?
They are. I don't think I have it here and I can send it to the committee. I've got a map that I present to the board each month when I do the board meeting that shows the geographic distribution of the retail establishments across the state. So I can send it to the committee so you can see there is a good geographic distribution with the caveat that the legislature did create that opt-in provision. So towns have to affirmatively vote to opt in if they want to host a retail establishment. So there are certainly areas throughout the state that are dry, as you might say, or don't have a cannabis retail establishment. So a perfect example is Burlington. I think we've got 15 retailers in Burlington at this point, and South Burlington has none. So because they have not opted in. So there are areas of the state that don't have easy access to a retail. For that.
And do you get reports from well, you said you do retailers about how their business is doing in general, or? I mean, have we had some that went out of business and new ones that started up, or are they pretty much staying in once they get in?
That's a great question. We have had, businesses have closed already, certainly. And I can get those numbers to the committee too, if you'd like to see those. The number of retailers that have closed, I think, is pretty small, so far. There hasn't been a big graveyard of retailers yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Individual growers establish the price, I assume, of their product.
It really is up to the industry, yes, to determine the price of the product, and I think those negotiations are happening between cultivators and the other licensees that they're selling to.
So that could affect people's success.
Absolutely.
If they're asking too much for their product, fewer people will buy it, assumedly, if the free market works, and vice versa, so.
Yep. And I think there are all kinds of factors that also play into the price point, like the percentage of THC in the flower, for example, how potent the flower is also plays into what people are getting as a price.
And you mentioned the tier one has a cap of $50,000 a year?
That's for tier one manufacturing only.
Okay,
So that's that was a little bit of a sort of an anomaly that the board created. It's this very small, low barrier to entry, low license fee, license type for just folks that wanted to do cannabis product manufacturing as sort of a side business.
And what about the growers? There's no cap on.
Nope, there is no cap on the number of licenses that the board is issuing. One side note there is that the board has closed, tiers 4 and 5 for all cultivation types. So when the board originally proposed their fee structure, there were actually 6 tiers that were proposed of cultivation licenses. The board never opened tier 6, which was the largest. And just in November, the board voted to close the tiers 4 and 5. So right now, the only cultivation licenses that are available for somebody who wants to get into the industry is tiers 1 through 3. And you can see how many, I guess we changed the slide, but there's a handful. I mean, tier 4 and 5 of all cultivation types, there's a total of under 10. So there aren't many of those folks growing.
Now they're larger, right?
Yes, they are.
And they're done.
That's right. As of now, the board could theoretically reopen those tiers, reopen those applications for those tiers at any point, but I think that you listen to the board's conversations in their public meeting. The conversation is really about controlling the size of our cultivation canopy to ensure that we continue to prioritize those, or continue to make sure that those small growers have an opportunity to succeed.
Do you have a question? Is the square footage in that on your website?
Yes, and I think it's a slide.
Okay,
Yeah, it's slide,
you're getting,
it's slide 5, if you'd like to look at that.
Okay. thank you.
Linda, if you're able to pop forward to slide 5. There, the back one, sorry. Slide 4, my mistake. So here's the canopy size. And the way that this graph is done is I've compared the capacity, license capacity, to what is actually being utilized. So the dark blue at the bottom is the square footage that we've licensed. So here's the capacity of grow space that we've got right now. For indoor, it's 372,000 square feet. And for outdoor, it's 564,000 square feet. But based on our site visits, what is actually being utilized is about 75% of that outdoor space is currently being utilized. And, you know, right now, it's even less than that, because the grow season is over, but this was sort of based on our harvest time estimates. And then indoor capacity or indoor utilization is around 50% at this point.
And of the tier one, they have 100, can have up to 125 planes.
Yes, for the outdoor and mixed.
Does the board control the seed, or do they buy that on the open market, or how do we control, other than your inspectors or your colleagues that go visit the farm?
Yeah.
How do we know how many farms have to transplant because of poor seed or no?
Yes, so that's a great question, because especially when you think about when the market first opened, there was not really a legal pathway for folks to get their young stock to start their businesses. So they were getting that from the illicit market or from buying it online, or however they got it, was sort of how they started up. The legislature, in your wisdom, last year created another license type for us to start issuing, which is the nursery license. So starting in July, we will be issuing nursery licenses to folks who would like to just sell young seeds and young stock to the licensed community. So the way that you guys created it is that nurseries will be able to sell young plants to other licensees, and they'll be able to sell seeds also to the public.
Can you just elaborate a little bit? What does that mean, a nursery? Is it like the nurseries that I would go to get other plants will be able to do that, or is this specific to cannabis?
Yeah, so it's a relatively inexpensive license type. I think that we sort of mirrored the cost off of the lower level cultivation licenses. I think it's actually even a little bit less, it's $750. I can find out the cost. But the idea was really to make it another low barrier to entry license type, so that somebody who's interested in just like playing with genetics or, you know, growing unique strains.
Yeah.
And supplying those strains to the industry could get in and do it. It's the canopy, I think, is around 2,500 square feet to grow the young stock in. And the board was what we didn't want to have happen is for the nurseries to have the same regulatory burden as the retail establishments to, you know, have all of the security and have all of the ID checking. So the proposal was, and the legislature agreed, that rather than allow nurseries to sell young plants directly to the public, which would then require this sort of double ID checking and all of the other sort of safety parameters that are in place for the retail chains, to instead allow the nursery licenses to only transfer young stock to other licensees. So then you sort of eliminate the need for a lot of those regulatory requirements. That answer your question?
It helps. Thanks.
Irene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you talk more about the social equity licenses? Or is that a slide as well?
I'm gonna, if you, Linda, if you don't mind scrolling back to slide 3, it's the pie chart, or the one but right before that. I don't know what's happening to that slide. Yeah, so this is the licenses issued by priority status. So the board, when they first started their work, they engaged with the advisory committee that the legislature created to help steer them in their policy thinking around the regulatory framework. And as they were thinking about the social equity program, they also were thinking about other ways that they could create an inclusive and equitable industry, which was part of the mandate of the board, that we create an equitable cannabis industry. So they also created a priority status of economic empowerment. And essentially, these are businesses that are owned by folks that are sort of traditionally kind of at a disadvantage in the marketplace. Women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, LGBTQ-owned businesses. So that's sort of what's represented by economic empowerment businesses. And there was no legislative mandate that economic empowerment businesses be entitled to the same types of benefits as social equity businesses. So really the benefit that these folks are getting is that we prioritize them in licensure. So and this was, I think, especially important when the market was first up and running, when we were first tasked with issuing licenses. There were a lot of applicants originally. And so this is how we prioritized our review of the applications. We prioritized social equity businesses and then economic empowerment businesses, and then what we're calling standard businesses. So that's what the three sort of categories mean in this chart. And this chart just shows how many of each type of business have we licensed so far. Or around, looks like between 20 and 30% economic empowerment businesses, about 20% social equity businesses, and then the majority are standard businesses. So, but happy to
Yeah, can
answer
you-
questions about that.
Renee,
Sure.
what's the difference in licensing fees? Cause I was told that the social equity folks get a real
Yes.
discount.
Yes.
Whereas an LGBTQ business, which I would think would be someone we want to bring in for equity purposes, still pays 10,000 a year.
Yes, so the legislature, because we're an agency, we're a state agency, we are mandated to collect the fees unless we have legislative authority to waive those fees. And so we were given the legislative authority, actually, we were tasked with providing some sort of fee waiver system to folks who qualify as social equity licensees. So for our social equity businesses, their licensing fees are waived in year one, so they pay no fee in the first year of their business. And then their licensing fee gradually grows over the first 5 years of their business. So when they renew in year one, they're charged 25% of the total fee. When they renew in year two, they're charged 50%, year three, 75%, year four, 100%.
And the definition again of somebody
Social
who
equity?
fits that category?
Yeah, so the board, this is defined in board rule, the board rule is based on the statutory mandate to create categories of people who have been historically disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. The board created several categories of people who meet this criteria. First is if you are Black or Hispanic, you are a social equity applicant, you are Black or Hispanic and you have been harmed by cannabis prohibition. If you have been incarcerated as the result of a conviction for a cannabis related offense, you are a social equity applicant or licensee. If you have,
Still get in?
oh yes, in fact, your fee is waived in year one if you're a social equity applicant. That's based on a conviction for a cannabis related offense for which you have served a period of incarceration. So if you were convicted of a cannabis related offense and you were sort of detained for a day pre-trial, and then you were released and you've never wound up serving a sentence for that conviction, that is not a social equity. You have actually served a period of incarceration as a result of that cannabis related conviction. Either you or your family member. So if you or your family member have served a period of incarceration for a cannabis related conviction, then you qualify for the social equity program. And then there is a third final category of people who qualify, and those are the people that can demonstrate to the board that they have been historically disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. And our rule lays out a few ways that an applicant can do that. So those are the criteria.
So just when you say family, is that my great uncle's second cousin was incarcerated? Because I mean, how much leverage does someone have to
Yes,
say,
I can actually.
I deserve a $10,000 break and then a $5,000? I mean, that's a lot of money the state is out, and that, you know,
How
I think it
much,
affects
how
competition.
much is the
right?
license?
10,000 a year
Well, that's for retail license,
for retail.
yes.
But the 85 It's 85, right?
The social equity, yes, yes, for those, they don't pay any licensing fee for year one.
No, but in the end, what is their total license fee per year?
Oh, the
At
top,
the,
oh,
at the end of 4, they have to pay the.
Yeah.
And what is that amount?
well, it depends on the license type. So if they've got a retail license, if they're a retailer, then that would be $10,000. If they're a tier one cultivator, it's $750 for an outdoor grower. Yeah, it depends on the license type.
Cause we got a guy up in South Burlington. That's a grower. We have a farmer, isn't it, in South Burlington that has ducks as well as cannabis.
That's
And that's extraction.
Oh,
That's
that's
Junction.
junction.
Essex
Junction.
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 He's right,
Big difference.
Big difference,
he's right in town.
city versus country.
I'm just wondering what a license for a small grower, there's gotta be a person that's a tier 1. What their license cost would be, like, how much that cost a person with a 100 or, 125 plants.
So none of the 50 thing.
Is that right?
I'm looking right now. I think it's 750, but I wanna be sure.
And we had
Yeah.
turnover within that category.
750.
750 for an outdoor tier one cultivation license. For an indoor tier one cultivation license, it's double that. It's 200.
So we've had turnover within the outdoor growers.
Certainly, yeah.
People gone in and out. I would say that if you're gonna open a retail shop and you've signed a lease on the building for a year and you pay $10,000, you probably put together a pretty good business plan before you started. Because that's a lot of money to be having. If you're growing and all you put in is 750 and you've got a plot in your backyard, that's a lot less commitment. So, they can stand to reason, good advantage.
Well, that's a great point, and just to follow up on your point, the regulatory burden associated with opening a retail establishment is much greater, heavier. And so, yes, you do have to be, I would say you have to jump through a lot more hoops to open a retail license than to open up a small cultivation.
I'm sure that you've got a business with a growing center.
Oh, yes.
And is that possible to put 125 plants on a 20 by 50 plot?
Now that is a question for one of my field agents. And I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I think it depends on how close you wanna pack them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And-
I didn't know. I mean, you've gotta have a certain amount of space per plant.
Yeah, so I would say no, I don't think so. I don't think you can fit that many plants in that amount of space.
It's pretty small.
Yeah. And many of our cultivators are not, the small tier one cultivators are not growing 125 plants. They're growing a subset. Yes. And I think that was reflected in, the canopy capacity versus utilization chart. There are a lot of tier one growers who it's not a mandate that you grow 125 plants, it's a cap on how many plants you get.
Right, but if you're growing 125 plants, some are gonna be big, some are gonna be small. And you don't care if the plant's this tall or it's real tall, you count each plant. So, it's a rotation thing, so.
That's right, and I think another one of the rationale for the nursery license was to allow people to just focus on growing their cannabis for harvest and not have to utilize any portion of their canopy size for their young stock or for their genetics. They could just get them from nursery license.
So with that, if the nursery license takes off and you don't have this rotation, people are buying plants that are the smaller plants, so a place doesn't have to rotate. Would you, the board ever think of lowering the 125?
Well, we would have to do that legislatively if we wanted to do that. But you're talking about creating sort of smaller license type than the.
Yeah, well, if what's happening now, in the growing, you've got some big plants, you've got some small plants, and you're rotating, and each plant counts as one. If you take away a category where they don't have to, have any seedlings growing, then 125 plants that is all a big field of plants is different than somebody doing
Yeah.
a rotation.
It's a great point, and I would say that you're highlighting that different businesses have different ways that they like to do this, and I would just note that some of our tier ones are very particular about their genetics, and they are probably not going to go to a nursery, they're going to have their own stock. So I think that the board would probably like to preserve the ability for some, for some tier ones to do what they choose. But yes, I think some certainly will use their full capacity for just adult plants.
Have you had any complaints on security? People bothering the growers?
Yeah, we have, I wouldn't say it's pervasive, we have had,
That's been pretty good.
it's been pretty good. I'd say we've had some isolated incidents of people experiencing some, somebody coming onto their property to steal some of their plants. I'd say it's been no more than.
How about money? Because we know that money has always been an issue. And how resources flow, what's happening with all of that.
Are you now, will you elaborate on your question, do you mean,
I know my local bank doesn't want to take any of the money. And I know that most every place it's been more cash business than.
yes. So it's absolutely one of the biggest problems that our businesses are facing. It's one of the. I'll send the committee, we've done some exit interviews for people who have relinquished their license or decided not to renew their license, to try and identify what are the factors that are causing people to leave the industry, and banking and insurance is one of the biggest reasons. Finding a bank account is a challenge. Paying for a bank account is a challenge. As the committee probably knows, there are regulatory costs associated with cannabis banking, so that those banks are passing on those costs directly to the cannabis industry.
How many banks do we have? I think we started with credit union.
Yes, the credit unions, we have a list on our website of cannabis banks that are participating in the industry that's grown. I think we have 6 or 7 banks on there at this point.
Yeah, that's what I thought I read is their company.
They are coming, and I would say that the issue of finding a bank account is less now. Some folks are still struggling to find a bank account, especially the cultivators, given that some of the credit unions were sort of holding some accounts for other license types. This was an issue at the very beginning. They were sort of capping the number of cultivation bank accounts they were going to issue, and they were holding for other types of licensees. As more banks have come online and been willing to participate in the cannabis industry, I think it's less of a problem to find an account and more a problem to pay for it. It's a big chunk.
And to get insured,
Another
yeah,
really heavy expense for these cannabis businesses.
but there are companies that will
Yes, there are.
cover them now. And do you know who, or is that on your website?
It's also on our website. Yes, we've got a list on the website of businesses who are providing insurance coverage. But again, I would just note that the businesses that are initially interested in covering cannabis businesses, the insurance providers may not be the biggest names that you've heard of. And so it's one of the concerns that the agency has, is that are these folks being insured properly and adequately? So our team is really trying to partner with DFR to learn about how we can be reviewing these insurance policies to make sure that they cover everything that these folks need to have covered.
And why would an insurance company be hard to find? other than, they had coffee together, so had a big meeting and some while come back and say, well, this is gonna be the minimum premium. And they all the few hang together. What would be the big coverage for an insurance company?
Well, I think,
Op loss? That,
Well,
why?
yeah, I think it would be, if you're a retailer, I wouldn't want to have people walking in and out of my shop on a snowy day with ice in the yard, because if somebody fell, I can see them suing. That's different than the tier one grower, where it's just you and it's not other people coming in.
That's the one I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, but I think all the way down the line, if you've got a store and you've got people coming in and out, I want to be covered.
Oh, yeah, store, but I'm talking about growers.
Yep.
I mean, that's our main interest is in the growers, not the retail.
Well, the 70 odd retailers, if we don't have them, the grower's got no place to sell it.
Well, yeah, there'd be another one right behind it. One that left. I'm sure you have a waiting list, right, for retailers?
well, we've got several in the queue, but we're not, we haven't put a pause on any of the license types, so. We do have,
Ever.
no, except for the larger tier cultivation types, but, we're continuing to process applications for retail licenses.
So how many states have now approved cannabis industry? I mean, at one point, I was here 10 years ago, the selling point was that the surrounding states weren't there yet. And we could make millions and millions and millions. And then at each state, it became less, so.
Yeah, we were a little late for that, but, I think at this point it's around 40 states that have legalized some form of cannabis, and that includes medical only. So for adult use, I think it's around half. We might be up to 30 at this point who've authorized adult use or recreational cannabis.
So it would seem that we
We're
might
around
be
the
getting
middle.
close to critical mass and that. Because this seems to me to be a much more regulated industry than, say, if I had a craft beer company. I mean, because federally it's still prohibited. If all of that went away, it would seem to be a little easier to kind of do business.
Certainly be easier for the agency and for the regulated community. I'd say that, a significant amount of the regulations are based around this idea that we are trying to set up a regulatory structure that does not prioritize Vermont. So, answer to your earlier question, at the end of the first.
Okay.
So just to return to that social equity criteria, so a family member is defined for purposes of the rule as a spouse, a domestic partner, a child, a stepchild who resided with the family member when the child was a minor in guardianship, legal guardian parent, sibling, grandparent, or grandchild.
Okay, so even a grandparent, that's pretty generous, I think, but okay, thank you. Do you have data as to how many of your, say, retail establishments are owned by white men versus women versus LGBTQ versus veterans? Like, do you have any breakouts of?
So we
Like that?
have a breakout of, I would say, no, we don't have that granular level of detail just yet, and that's for a few reasons. One of which is that our licensing portal is still sort of under development, so, and another is that we don't have one of our staff members hasn't joined us yet, which is the data manager, and that person I think is gonna be able to dig into the data a lot more. We have some of the data, like we have a breakout of how many social equity licensees fit into each criteria, but I don't think we've narrowed it down to license type just yet.
All said,
For now,
and
where'd you get that data?
do you keep track or know, or any small, we've been losing a lot of our small dairy farms. Do you have any idea if any of those farms switched over to a tier one small grower to keep their farm in operation or in the family or?
So that is a great question that is on the list of things we would like to dig into when we have a data manager. The one thing I would note is that, we have made sure to let applicants know when they're applying, that if they do have federal support, for their business, which many, I think dairy farms do, and many other traditional agricultural farms have, for example, crop insurance, which is, which is federal money. They do jeopardize that, by getting into the cannabis industry. So we try and make sure that people are aware of that before they go through all of the hurdles for the cannabis license. Oh, look who's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing a good job. I'm
Well,
sure James is happy that you're here.
You guys really taught her to roll with the punches.
I'm happy to turn it over to James if you'd like, or if you want to just come try.
Sure.
Or you sit there with, there's a chair.
Yes. Sorry.
Welcome, James. This room's much better than the room we just left, I'm sure.
Well, auspicious start to the year, yeah, for the record, James Pepper, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board. But I'll just let Brenda continue. I can see she's kind of halfway through this presentation.
We've been jumping around and we're pretty near to the end, I think.
Well, I'm happy to continue as we have been with just answering questions, or I can go through the rest of the slides.
Well, it would be good, and if you have any requests that's gonna be rolling through, it'd be good for us to be tuned into that. And we started, of course, late, so we'll allow you to run your hour time, so we're good.
Oh, okay, well, why don't we turn then, rather than going through, since our time is coming to an end, why don't I turn to the, would you like to go over the bill, any portions of the bill, or just our request, if there is one request?
Well, whatever you think we should know about.
Yeah.
Help as we move forward in the session to.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to do that. I think we have identified a few areas that we think are important, technical amendments, very little actual policy changes, significant policy changes in the bill that's been introduced in the House. But there are a few that are going to impact your work here that touch on agriculture, as you can imagine. The big one is around intoxicating hemp-derived products. And to understand this issue, it's a little bit complicated, but there's kind of a legal fiction that hemp is a different plant than marijuana as it's known in the Controlled Substance Act. And this is an outgrowth of the 2018 federal farm bill. They created a definition of hemp. There's a lot of interest in growing hemp for seed or fiber or for CBD. In 2018, we really didn't understand at the time that there are a lot of intoxicating cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, other than THC. Also, there are manufacturing processes that you can apply to THC and CBD in order to kind of synthesize intoxicating derivatives. And so there's a major interstate industry that's developing alongside the cannabis industry of people growing hemp, low THC cannabis, hemp. And they're either extracting out just all the THC and putting it into edibles and vape cartridges, or they're applying these processes to CBD and THC to create derivatives. Think of Delta 8, you've probably heard of Delta 10, THCO. These are intoxicating products. But the argument that these producers are making is because they're derived from a legal plant, hemp, that none of the state regulatory framework in any state applies to their products. They're governed by the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And so they're shipping these products, these high THC products that would exceed the limits that we even have in adult use stores. They're shipping these products through the mail, you buy them online. They're in gas stations, vape shops, grocery stores. There's no accurate labeling. There's no child resistant packaging. And importantly, there's no age restrictions. You know, you can sell these to a child. And so the legislature, I think 2 years ago, recognized this as a problem. Our legislature gave the Cannabis Board authority over hemp-derived products, or intoxicating cannabinoids, I should say. And we created an emergency rule they would define what an intoxicating hemp-derived product would be, certain thresholds. And we banned the synthetics. The issue that we're running into, we did that by emergency rule, and then subsequently we did it by permanent. The issue that we're running into is that there is a definition in the agriculture statutes of a hemp-derived product
In Vermont.
in Vermont. And it just incorporates the federal definition. So there's a conflict. Our rule, our administrative rule, says that these products are either banned or they need to work through the cannabis regulatory framework. But then there's a alternative definition of hemp-derived products in Title VI, the agriculture statutes, that says that these products are hemp-derived and they're legal, essentially. And so the major section that involves this committee's kind of jurisdiction in the GovOps bill, the House bill, just incorporates our definition of intoxicating hemp-derived product. And just makes it very clear that those products are not the kind of dietary supplement, food, drug, and cosmetic products that can be sold anywhere. They need to be kind of tested, labeled, child-resistant packaging, and sold in adult use retail operations.
And did you say government ops has that?
House government ops, the jurisdiction of cannabis is kind of, it essentially touches every committee in one way or another, but House Gov Ops takes the lead on the House side, and then economic development and this committee have historically taken the lead on kind of cannabis issues on the Senate. So this will be coming to you, I think, after crossover
From the House.
from the House.
If it comes out is it gonna go to ag on the House side?
It may. They always kind of have a negotiation about how many committees actually need to take possession of these issues. And they may just get a briefing on it, or they may want possession of the entire.
Cause I know over there on this side, the next committee up the hall, it would probably end up there. Or would it?
This because this touches Title VI, I think it'll just have to be in a conversation with you and the chair of economic development.
We work well together. You know, either way it would work.
The other major portion that touches, I think, this jurisdiction to a degree is, and we've been hearing from a lot of outdoor cultivators that, while they're essentially, small farmers that have decided to diversify, grow a little bit of cannabis in addition to some of the other crops, agricultural products they're producing. When they bring in what are called mobile trim teams, around harvest time to help facilitate just harvesting the plant, getting into a barn for curing and drying. They're not subject to fire safety because they're oftentimes either agriculture, small farmers, or they're just a sole proprietor. So this one person shop. So their farm is not considered a public building. But once they bring in a mobile trim team, any sort of employee, any sort of member of the public, their non-public building converts to a public building for the purposes of fire safety certification. And that means, you know, all the commercial building codes, sprinklers, fire detectors, you know, bringing everything up to code. And you know, that's impossible for many people. It's just, you know, to convert a barn into a full kind of commercial building is just really a challenge. And especially because it's such a narrow time of year, it's once a year potentially. And so we're requesting, I mean, fire safety essentially just needs clarification. Are we considering these kind of barns, you know, these agricultural buildings that are being temporarily used by temporary workers? Are we considering those public buildings for the purposes of getting a certificate of occupancy and having fire safety jurisdiction? Or should these be exempt like they would be if you were, for instance, growing hemp, you know, in agriculture? So that's another one.
I think we'd call that an agricultural farm system.
So that's one that you'll see too, and in that bill, there's a section in the bill that kind of just clarifies that for outdoor cultivators that are using kind of their barns and existing infrastructure, that they don't necessarily need to be brought up to the full spectrum of the commercial building codes. And then I think that's really, there's other stuff in the bill, there's a lot on the medical program. I think what you're gonna see, we've been just kind of, there's a bill in the House around the Essex Junction
Yeah.
situation. That kind of tries to define where outdoor cultivation should and shouldn't be. So that may get incorporated into this bill. You might see that. On the flip side, there's, we've heard from some of the advocacy organizations that there's a desire to exempt outdoor cultivation from some of the wetlands rules. These aren't things that we're advocating for one or the other. These are purely policy decisions for this committee to make. But you might see some of those issues. The big one that I think a lot of people are pushing for is to have some form of farmers market for cannabis. And this would be not, I don't think this would be integrating cannabis into existing farmers markets. I think this would be kind of a standalone farmers market for people over 21.
But how would you ever control that?
So this did seem kind of far out of reach a while back, but because of the situation that's playing out in New York, where you know the New York cannabis industry or the cannabis board licensed a bunch of growers, and then their retail scheme for handing out retail licenses got held up in a court case. So you got all these growers that are just sitting on all of this legally grown hemp. They've invested all of their life savings to growing this, and they had no legal outlet to sell it. So in response, they passed kind of emergency rules around allowing farmers markets. And so we've had, I think, about 9 months worth of examples of New York holding farmers markets, and there have not been any of the kind of worst case scenarios play out in those. So there is a model that exists out there. Again, this isn't necessarily something that we're advocating for. It's just, I assume that there's been a lot of chatter about it in the off session. And so I think you might see something coming this way. And if that is the case, we just want to kind of help guide it in a way that it will be done safely.
Well, yes, because I think what the board and you folks have set up working well, and you know, the least little slip up, and you know, you guys are in hot water, but the legislature also is in hot water for allowing it to happen, so. You know, we get enough excellent press without pushing our luck on this,
Yeah.
too far.
I'm with you. I mean, as I think it was probably mentioned earlier, this is largely a cash industry, meaning that all these transactions at a farmer's market would likely be in cash. And, you know, there's just potentially heightened security risks when that's the case.
Sure.
So that's something that we would really need to get in front of and make sure that the regulations are set up in such a way that those risks are minimized.
Definitely. Yep. So we got 2 or 3 things, 2 things coming and some others that might be coming. but a couple right there.
Yeah, there's one other bill, sorry, just scroll down to the next page. There's one other bill that's been introduced or going to be introduced. I don't know if it's got any sort of legs at all, but it's about capping the number of licenses. Each license type, just putting caps that the board, once we hit a certain, threshold, whether it's cultivators, product manufacturers, retailers, that the board would be, there'd be a moratorium on new licenses.
But isn't that something I could see giving the board permission to play with caps, depending on the retail sales and all that, but it's better to let the free market work at will, but let the board decide, because we know what happens or what has happened forever on the milk side of letting everybody produce as much as they want and the price drops through the bottom and so yeah, keep an eye on that, because if you control it, then everybody can make a living at it. But if you don't control it, the grower, the guy that we really care about, will get hammered and that's why we push for small growers, so the big guys couldn't come and overrun the small guys and because we want to keep our ag land busy and open, and so people can afford to own it. And so, you will keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and
The committees.
it was a very intentional decision that the legislature made to not have a capped system. There's certainly a number of benefits to having a cap, but just like you said, if the cap system really just rewards either usually the first movers. The first movers are usually the ones that can afford to have lobbyists or lawyers or CPAs and can kind of write the perfect application first in line. But on the flip side, because there's no financing, there's no lending, there's no lines of credit, there's no insurance, there's no bankruptcy protection. When people crash out of this market because the price crashes, it's very personally devastating for those farmers. And so we do try to keep a very close eye on supply and demand and the price of cannabis. But we also want to always have some lane for new entrants into the market. It's not necessarily on the retail side, but certainly on the cultivation side. So what we've been trying to do is just slowly ratchet down the amount of canopy that we're willing to license, but always leave open that tier 1 and tier 2 small cultivators. Right now, we still have tier 3 open, but it's because this market is still ramping up. So.
Anything else?
Those are the big, I'm sure other stuff will come up through the
Yeah.
session, but those are the ones that I know about that I wanted to just alert this committee to. Obviously, the medical program needs to either kind of continue its downward slide or have some sort of intervention if we want to keep it. I think there's a lot of benefits that the patients are receiving in the medical program right now. I think it's worth saving, but it needs help.
Any other questions from the committee?
No, but I'd love to see you guys back in a few weeks or months, keep in touch. There's a lot of issues that aren't worked out, an hour doesn't do it. That's.
Yeah. No, it's gone well. Thanks, Bren, for.
Thank you.
Wine.
You all.
Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
We didn't expect to see you.
I told you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bren said you would want in if you.
They asked if I
Oh,
wanted.
and if you had.
Aw.
They asked if I want to know again. It's like I may need to talk.
Nice picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Thanks for the picture.
thanks. If anything comes along that you think we should know about, don't be shy, give us a call or.
Yeah.
want to get you in.
Thank
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you, Terry.
I think we're doing a good job. So, so we were gonna have a presentation, a little run through, from the legislative council on page 81. And, right, are you the
That's
council
me.
member?
It's me.
Yep. Well, that bill is not in here, it's in, joining committee. But, we get, some of it get calls quite frequently in regards to the bill. And it may come here or it may not, but, I thought the committee ought to have a run through of the bill, which we have copies of. And so if it does get sent here, we would, know a little bit
Right.
about it and be thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, okay.
welcome.
Well, for the record, Rick Sagel, legislative council. I always give this spiel to a new committee that I appear in. I am new. I've emailed a couple of you, I've met a couple of you. But I started here in October. I replaced, mostly David Hall's portfolio, Becky Wasserman also, maybe about 20% of her portfolio I took on. So I'm from Texas, don't hold that against me. You detect an accent. I try to hide it as best I can. I don't want to be seen as an outsider, but I am an outsider. But I do want to thank everybody for welcoming me. It's been very nice and people have been understanding. And I found housing. That's the first question that I get is, do you have housing? And I do. I got lucky that I have a place to live.
They were concerned about your housing.
It's the first question. Shocking, right? Shocking.
Well, yes.
But yes, I it's a little bit colder than
Well,
Fort Texas, where I'm from.
according to the weather, you haven't had it too nice down back
No.
home.
It was colder this weekend in North Texas than it was here.
Yeah,
And they were freaking out. They got like half an inch of snow. And down there, if you get half an inch of snow, it shuts down. I mean, there's no sand trucks, there's no plows. So at least here you all have the equipment. Yeah, clear the way and. Okay, well, that's my spiel. So it's nice meeting you all. I'll step away now. I do have a bill to
well, we gotta get these tractors rolling to keep our roads clean. So,
I'm gonna share my screen here. You're welcome to follow along. Okay. So making things maybe more complicated is David Hall wrote this bill. Not that I don't know about it. I've researched it. I have studied it. But this is his language. It did pass the House. It's House Bill 81 last session. This is a act related to the fair repair of agricultural equipment. And of course, I think it's in Senate Economic Development, Mr. Chair. I believe that's where it currently is.
yeah.
Yeah. So the bill, forgive me if you want me to skip certain things, I will. If you want me to speed through certain sections, I will. My former profession was a professor, so I tend to maybe go over things more than I should. So if you think I'm going over things you don't need to hear about, please interrupt me.
Well, it's the main part, of course, is, the farm equipment, sectors and what's allowed and what's, what the manufacturers would be required to do with the dealers.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll skip past the findings, but if you care to know something that is mentioned here, please just flag it and I will go over it. We'll start with the short title. This has been given the short title, the Fair Repair Act. Some of these definitions are actually very important. In this case, sometimes definitions you kind of scroll past them, but in this case, it is pretty important to understand for example, the definition of agricultural equipment. And this is a device, part of a device, or an attachment to a device designed to be principally used off-road for an agricultural purpose, including a tractor, trailer, or combine, implements for tillage, planting, or cultivation, and other equipment principally associated with livestock or crop production, horticulture, or floriculture. So again, that's pretty limiting in some ways, the definition, but it's important because this gets referenced quite often in the bill. An authorized repair provider means an individual or business that has an arrangement with the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer, under which this OEM grants to the individual a license to use a trade name, service mark, or some other proprietary identifier. So in other words, this is a authorized repair shop, right, that works with the OEM, that has some kind of arrangement with the OEM to repair on behalf of the OEM. That's an authorized repair provider. It could also be the OEM itself. In this case, the definition extends to an OEM that does its own repairs. So an authorized repair provider could be the OEM, or it could be a shop that has a relationship with the OEM. Documentation means any manual, diagram, reporting output, service code description, schematic diagram, security code, password, or other guidance or information, whether electronic or in paper form, that an OEM provides to an authorized repair provider to assist with diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of agricultural or forestry equipment. And here we define forestry equipment, which is also very important. It means non-divisible equipment, implements, accessories. I can't say I've seen this word before, contrivances, used directly and principally off-road in harvesting timber or for on-site processing of wood forest products, including equipment used to construct, maintain, or install infrastructure necessary to and associated with logging operation.
Right?
So if I could ask, line 15, what exactly is non-divisible?
Good question. Legally, I don't.
I mean, I know what it means.
Right.
I can't divide it. But
Right. I think, again, not an expert in, since I'm from Texas, right, we don't have forestry equipment. My guess is this, and this is not, again, good enough for you, but my guess is that that would be equipment, the entire portion, not the parts, I guess, just the equipment itself. In this case, I can't think of a piece of equipment used for forestry, but whatever that device would be, the entire machine, not the parts that make up the machine. That would be my interpretation of it. Yeah. Probably a question for an expert in the industry. Independent repair provider. So this is a person that does not have an arrangement with an OEM. This is your local shop that repairs equipment on its own. It's probably a small business. It could be a large business, but it does not have a relationship with the OEM. It's not authorized to make repairs on behalf of the OEM.
Are there any qualifications for that independent repair provider?
As long as it's engaged in the services of diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of agricultural or forestry equipment. So not a car repair shop, it would have to be a repair shop that mostly does that kind of work.
But it could be an individual,
It could.
a shop that has the diagnostic equipment, and they would be allowed to pick up what this bill allows as far as from the OEM, the testing.
Yes. And in fact, eventually this bill does also include owners of the equipment. So you don't even have to be a repair person. If you're an owner of the machine that breaks down, you would also be given the tools, equipment to make the repairs.
Yeah. I see you're coming.
You have part 6, OEM. That's a person engaged in the business of selling, leasing, or otherwise supplying new agricultural equipment manufactured on behalf of itself or in individual business. And you have an owner, means an individual or business that owns or leases agricultural or forestry equipment purchased or used in the state. A part means any replacement part, new or used, made available by an OEM for purposes of effecting the services of maintenance or repair of this type of equipment, manufactured by or on behalf, sold, or otherwise supplied by the OEM.
And what about foreign made equipment? Do we, of course, there'd be a corporation here with it selling it, so I wonder if the foreign manufacturer is obligated to the OEM in this country to put this stuff on.
Yeah, if it's a foreign OEM and you buy it here in a, a business that sells that foreign made equipment, that foreign OEM would be accountable under this law. But if they did not provide that support to the owner or to the repair shop, how would you hold them accountable? And that would be difficult. The state of Vermont would not necessarily be able to hold a foreign entity accountable unless they had a subsidiary here in this country, in the state, which most do.
Well, I understand that we manufacture very few small tractors. Almost all of them are imported from somewhere. The thing, it's the big ones we still manufacture here, but there's certain, like 50 horsepower and down, they're pretty much all manufactured outside of the US.
Yeah. So if it's a US company that sells a product but is manufactured in a different country, that US OEM would still be accountable, even though it's made in China, whatever, Mexico, whatever country it's made in. But yeah, if it's a foreign company, that could be difficult.
Could I just jump in again, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So can I just go back to sub 7? The way I'm reading this means that regardless of where it is purchased, as long as it's being used in the state of Vermont, this would still be applicable. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we're on part 9. Tools is any software program, hardware implement, or other apparatus used for diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of agricultural or forestry equipment, including software or other mechanisms that provision, program, or repair a new part, calibrate functionality, or perform any other function required to bring the product back to fully functional condition, including any updates.
May I ask why it's tools plural when we're talking about parts singular? Seems to me like that should be something else.
Yes, I think
It's a
that's
tool is any, right?
right. I think that's a good point.
I-
Usually we do singular in these definitions.
That's a correction that I don't know. We made on our end.
And as we go through the bill, maybe there's a reason, but I think you're probably right. I'll highlight that. Part 10, trade secret, means information, including the formula, pattern, compilation, program, device, method, technique, or process that A, derives independent economic value, actual or potential, from not being generally known, to and not being readily ascertainable by proper means, by other persons who can obtain economic value from its disclosure or use, and B, it is the subject of efforts that are reasonable under these circumstances to maintain its secrecy. And that comes up here in a little bit why that was added. The manufacturers were concerned that they would lose trade secrets if they had to provide certain information to independent repair shops. Section 4052, here we actually have the crux of the bill. So this is where you place a duty on the OEM to make certain things available, mostly parts, tools, and documents. So the duty A of an OEM shall offer for sale or otherwise make available to an independent repair provider or owner the parts, tools, and documentation that the OEM offers for sale or otherwise makes available to an authorized repair provider. So if you give it to your repair shop that you work closely with, it's authorized, you should also give it to your independent shops or people who own the equipment. If this equipment includes an electronic security lock or other security related function that must be unlocked or disabled to perform diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of the equipment, an OEM shall make available to an independent repair provider or owner any parts, tools, and documentation necessary to unlock this functionality and to reset the lock after the diagnosis, maintenance, or repair is complete. 3, an OEM may make parts, may, not shall, may make parts, tools, and documentation available to an independent repair provider or owner through an authorized repair provider that consents to sell or make available parts, tools, or documentation on behalf of the manufacturer.
So it doesn't say owner there. They don't have to make it available to the owner. They have to. Right. On line 19, does that clarify that?
I believe so. I believe the part of the reason for this is that,
Or owner?
yeah. Okay, part B, terms and limitations. So these are limitations to this duty to provide these tools or parts. Under the terms governing the sale or provision of parts, tools, documentation, an OEM shall not impose on an independent repair provider or owner an additional cost or burden that is not reasonably necessary within the ordinary course of business, or is designed to be impediment on the independent repair provider or owner. So you can certainly charge for this equipment parts that you're, giving to the owner or independent shop. However, that must be reasonable in the course of business. You cannot charge an unreasonable, unconscionable amount of money for this part that the owner needs. So these include a substantial obligation to use or a restriction on the use of the parts, tools, or documentation necessary to diagnose, maintain, or repair equipment. A condition that the independent repair provider or owner become an authorized repair provider of the OEM. A requirement that a part, tool, or documentation be registered, paired with, or approved by the OEM or an authorized repair provider before the part, tool, or documentation is operational. Or an additional burden or material change that adversely affects the timeliness or method of delivering parts, tools, or documentation. Okay, part C, the costs and limitations. An OEM shall offer for sale or otherwise make available parts, tools, and documentation to an independent repair provider or an owner at a cost that is 1, fair to both parties, considering the agreed upon conditions, promised equality, and timeliness of delivery. And part 2, that does not discourage or incentivize repair to be made by an owner or an independent repair provider. So this is sort of vague. It's giving some room for the OEM and the independent shop or owner to not strike a deal. However, I think this kind of is making it clear that the OEM is not going to do this for free. But you should also not charge the independent shop or owner a cost that would discourage repair of the equipment. Section 4053, enforcement. So a person who violates a provision of this chapter commits an unfair and deceptive act in trade and commerce in violation of section 2253. I'm guessing you all familiar with that language. Part B, the AG has the same authority to make rules, conduct civil investigations, enter into assurances of discontinuance, and bring civil actions as provided in chapter 63, subchapter 3. So that's the consumer protections aspect. 4054, applications limitations. This chapter does not require an OEM to divulge a trade secret to an owner or an independent service provider. This chapter does not alter the terms of any arrangement described in 4051-2A, which go back up. That is the definition of an authorized repair provider. Go down. So it does not alter the terms of an arrangement between an authorized repair provider and an OEM. Oh, it actually gives you, it says it afterwards. I don't know why it does both, but so yeah, it does not alter those terms, including the performance or provision of warranty or recall repair work by an authorized repair provider on behalf of an OEM pursuant to such arrangement, except that any provision governing such an arrangement that purports to waive, void, restrict, or limit the OEM's obligations to comply with this chapter is void and unenforceable.
So, what's that saying? Is that saying that if I'm the mechanic repair shop, you're the OEM?
Mhm.
And I go to work on this piece of equipment and mess the piece of equipment up because I'm not capable of fixing it. Does it give you does it OEM some recourse to come back on me, or does that say tough luck and Irene gets her tractor back from me on the tow truck? Because I can't fix it, and then she brings it to you. You find that what I did messed it up more than, I mean, where does, do you understand?
Yes, I understand the question. And I'll give you an answer that I think will hopefully help answer your question. I think the focus here is on warranty work. And that's why it says that specifically, that if an OEM has this authorized shop performing warranty work, this bill does not affect that relationship. So as an owner of equipment, you can't conduct warranty work. You are not authorized, right, to make repairs that would comply with the warranty of the product, nor may an independent shop make repairs that would be covered by a warranty of the product. So if there is a warranty service provider authorized that is authorized to make warranty repairs, this bill cannot affect that relationship.
But see, some of this equipment will run 24/7 harvesting time. And a lot of shops or a lot of big shops are not open on Sunday or may have very limited crew on it, even though the rig warranty. And if the rig breaks down at 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, they get their own repair guy out there because the shop where they purchased it is closed. So they bring their own guy out, or they have to sit on their thumbs until Monday. And their guy messes it up, even though he has the equipment
Right.
that he received from OEM, but he messes it up. Who who's responsible here? Even though it's under warranty, but the owner decides, well, I can't sit around here for a day and a half. Um, And I'm wondering who bites the bullet?
So I think that aspect, if that happened today, if an OEM gives a part to a shop that's not authorized to make a repair, or if the owner gets a part
Yeah.
from the OEM, that person is not authorized, right? And if that owner of the equipment makes a repair, attempts a repair, but somehow makes the device worse and voids the warranty today, if that happened today, there would be no recourse for the owner of the equipment. Correct, so that's my understanding, correct? This bill does not change that. This bill makes it clear that if an OEM has a relationship with warranty company for warranty work, this bill does not affect that. You're not giving the independent shop warranty protection. It's still possibly not a good idea for an owner of equipment to hire a local shop that's not authorized to make a repair. It can make the repair, but you may void the warranty.
Well, why I raised that is, my son runs a business, and when we purchase a new vehicle, it's fully warranted. We buy the warranty to cover it for 5 years. And one of the trucks, was brand new, had 20,000 miles on it. Well, we could have tinkered on that. They asked me about it and I said, well, what it's doing, it sounds to me like it's the injectors. But that's only my opinion. Well, rather than fool with it, drive it to Kenworth. It's gone for 4 weeks. They called Cummins. Cummins says it's something in the head, take the head out. So they removed the head. Put a new head on, put it back together, put a new head on. Same thing. So Cummins said, well, take the head back off, pull the pistons out. It's gonna be something to do with the pistons. So they take it all back apart again. Well, the long story is they had that truck there a month, put brand new pistons, brand new bearings, put it all back together again, doing the same thing. Well, Cummins said, take the afterburner off and clean all that. Well, anyways, it was gone basically a month. And it was the injectors. But if I'd have told the boys, well, it's in the head, or it's in the pistons, or it's in the bearings, I mean, somebody'd be out an awful, whereas Cummins paid for Green Mountain Kenworth to do all this work because they were authorizing it. But at home, they wouldn't be authorizing it, and somebody would be in quite a lot of trouble financially. And there isn't anything in here to take care of a situation like that.
That, I agree with you. I don't think there is. And, you know,
If you had Joe Blow, the next door neighbor that's a repairman, do all this work, you're gonna need to get paid.
Right.
And I don't know, it's a very tricky. But anyways,
the warranty aspect is interesting. The only time the warranty is mentioned is that line I just read, that it's not gonna the relationship between the OEM and the authorized provider, that is not affected by this bill. If you want to have some kind of language that would further protect, I assume you're kind of leaning towards protecting the owners if they do this work on their own. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, the OEM ought to be protected, or somebody ought to be
OEM.
protected, because, I mean, this stuff, this equipment is very technical. And it could be the simplest little thing, or it could be a major thing. And if you've got warranty on it, and the manufacturer of, it's usually the engine. If the manufacturer of that engine okays it to do, yeah, you've gotta do this, or you gotta do that, they're gonna pay the bill. I mean, that bill on our truck was like $16,000. Well, you know, the farmer that owns that piece of, that chopper or something, he had that at Joe Blow's, it might not be $15,000 or $18,000, but it might run up into $10,000. And somebody's gonna pay that bill. And so I just raising from experience.
Sure.
That's a heavy paragraph. By the
Yes.
time you get to the end of it, there's a lot there.
Sure, yeah, the limitations of the bill, and that's something that the committee would like to, obviously, when you have possession of the bill, if you have possession of the bill, we can discuss ways to,
Yeah,
you know, work that out, protect, you know, the OEM, the repair shops, however you can work that. Let me just finish this off here, if
yeah,
that's
go
okay.
ahead.
So part C, we're still under limitations. So an independent provider, repair provider or owner shall not modify agricultural or forestry equipment to deactivate a safety notification system except as necessary to provide diagnosis, maintenance, or repair services. Access any function of a tool that enables the independent shop or owner to change the settings for a piece of agricultural or forestry equipment in a manner that brings the equipment out of compliance within the federal, state, or local emissions law, except to make these diagnoses or repairs, or obtain or use parts, tools, documentation to evade or violate emissions, copyright, trademark, or patent laws, or to engage in any other illegal activity. Sorry. This to me seems like it was added, perhaps during the House. I didn't look at the full discussion, but there may have been some concerns from manufacturers that owners would start doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And this, I think, attempts to.
I think they do in some cases.
Okay.
I don't know about farm tractor and skidder, but they do that with big trucks and delete all this stuff. And then they go to get a new truck.
Mhm.
They keep their old truck. They won't even, most dealers won't even take the piece of equipment back in because it's against the law to do that. And then they would be breaking the law if they resold that with all that emissions and things deleted, so. I can see why they added that. Anything else you'd like to add to your presentation?
That's what I had, just a basic walkthrough. There are some other right to repair bills around the country. There's a federal one, a general federal right to repair that's been introduced in Congress. Colorado passed a right to repair agricultural that passed, and also a wheelchair bill that passed. So in Colorado, both those bills are in effect. So there's this movement to pass this type of legislation. It's debatable how you can award it, and you know, things you can add or remove to make it work for this state.
Yeah. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So I'm curious, There apparently, although I haven't seen it, there's an MOU that's already existing. How close is that to what is in this bill? Have you read the memorandum? No.
No. So who is it from?
Manufacturers, from what I understand.
Okay.
An MOU between, the American Farm Bureau Federation and the manufacturers, in regards to allowing, I guess, this repair to, or the diagnostic to be available to owners of the equipment. And it, you know, it might be good sometime if you review that.
Sure.
And then if we should happen to get the bill from the other committee, we'd have a line up on it. Yep. So, anything else, committee? Oh. Well, thank you, and
Thank you.
nice, nice meeting you, and
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you as well.
sure we'll see you more often.
Yeah, I may not be here a whole lot, but I think occasionally consumer protection is one of my
Yeah.
portfolios, so this kind of falls into that. So every evening, I'm ready.
Did you get some snow tires too?
First thing I did, I'm probably the first one in town to get them.
Where were you coming from?
Northfield, oh, well, Texas.
Texas, yeah,
I live in
detected a little.
He's right from Northfield, Vermont.
I'm from South, Northfield, Vermont.
Well, welcome, glad you're here.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Excited.
Yeah, great. All right, y'all, thank you.
All
Oh,
right.
I had there, you got the yawn.
That's y'all.
Great.
Embarrassing.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Few years back, and we flew down to Dallas, Texas,
Hear this.
pick up a little Texas story.
Yeah.
We,
I'll lead you.
my son and I and my grandson was little, but came along with us. We flew down to Dallas and bought a couple of brand new, Volvo big trucks. So we came up out of Dallas and decided that we'd go up around by Oklahoma City and you know, across and of course, there's nothing but brown grass down there. And you could look as far as your eyes could see and there wouldn't be a thing out there but brown grass. And there was a horse standing out there, maybe 2 miles away, so we did see one animal. And finally got up out of Texas and got into Oklahoma. And it started, a little snow started coming. And by the time we got to Oklahoma City, we figured we'd stay over there. And I mean, there was a foot of snow. The median was full of cars off the road. And we traveled, I don't know how many miles, at basically 20-25 miles an hour in that snowstorm to get to our hotel. Finally made it, and I said, no offense.
Sure. I'm not here.
I can't use all the words that I said, but am I ever glad to be out of Texas and Oklahoma and out to Oklahoma City?
It's a little different than here, I'll tell you that. I went to college in West Texas, and that's an even different animal than Oklahoma City, nor, yeah, it's country, wide open. It's not even grass, it's dirt. I mean, grass won't even grow in West Texas. It's so dry. It's not quite the desert, but
But you have
it's
some big
tumbleweeds.
dairy farms down there.
Yes, dairy farms,
Big.
meats packing, West Texas is.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's a big,
It's got
I
a-
think it's bigger than all of New England, I think. Texas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
less people, but
No, it's, no, we have a great country here, very diverse and.
yeah. But I moved here for a reason. Yeah, the scenery's nice.
Well,
weather's different, but
yeah, the weather is.
It's not as hot. So.
that's, believe me, when I visited here, I came in the summer, I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Enjoy and, we'll,
You know where to
no,
find
we
us?
worked with David quite a bit.
Okay,
David Hall on different issues.
Oh, did he leave? Is that what?
Yeah.
He
Okay.
doesn't need-
I got about 70% of his and 20% of Becky's information.
Nice.
Well, it was good having you in.
Yeah.
And you did a good job.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. That's great. I'll tell Michael Grady that.
Yeah,
Right now. Take care, guys. Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Nancy's here.
Oh. Get her in.
Yeah.
Do any of you need a present?
think that would be probably.
Yeah, great.
You too.
I know, I was just over at Nodder swearing in. It was nice. It was nice, yeah.
Oh.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice. He was looking for
We're
everybody.
gonna-
But-
We're gonna take a short break. The grant stopped yet this morning.
Yeah, you need a break.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so go ahead and we'll take a little break.
Okay.
So, Grady, how are you?
Break. How are you?
Good, thanks.
See you.
Good to see you.
Tell me what I missed as we walk.
My laptop? Sure. How do you want the?
Well, you can run it if you,
Hello.
did you get my? This is-
I'll
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And then you can, navigate,
Yes.
I can do it from here, but.
If I do it, okay, great.
Purchase
I don't have money.
Yeah,
Hello,
Yeah,
Cassie, can you?
Rep David Templeman, I'm not
Oh, you're
in
not
this
on the
committee, I'm just observing, I was the one who presented this bill to the House.
Oh, okay,
So I'm just sort of following along and
yeah,
here if they have any questions.
okay. The machinery bill?
Yes, the retro card, is that why you're here?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe
No,
my
but-
time here is